Hi everyone, I'm Greg from 4 Mark Supercar Club, and we're here today to talk to racing legend, legend in his own lifetime, none other than Tiff Needell. Welcome, Tiff.
Good day to you, Greg. Hi.
How you doing? You okay? You at
Yeah,
home?
very good. I'm looking, I'm well lit. I'm hoping, I'm trying to keep the age off me, but I'm feeling good. In fact, I've had a nice time, looking after the house and the estate. The garden's looking good, but the bank balance is a bit empty.
Is that a 1,000-acre estate, is it?
Well, not quite, no, but I've got my quad bike and a flail mower, and I've got a bit of river. I've been weeding a river. Now, if you ever told anybody that was the true thing, Tiff Needell weeds his own river. It's a little sort of 2-foot deep tributary to the River Test, and it's got a little trout in it. And I go in. I like to make it look pretty. I'm getting more and more OCD as I get older, so a weed that looks out of place has to be removed.
That sounds like the sort of thing I would do. So you're in Salisbury, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, just east of Salisbury, a little village, east of Lockerley, middle of nowhere, lovely part of the world.
Not too far from us, actually. You should maybe come out on one of our drives.
Well, of course, I used to live at Harting, West Harting, by Petersfield, which is closer to you, isn't it? About halfway the other side. But I'm a southerner all the time. So yeah, I look forward to meeting up with the team. Yeah, I'd love to come on one of your trips, meetings, and look forward to meeting more of you in the future.
Yeah, that'd be really good. That'd be really good. So we're here to do some grilling, I'm afraid. We've got some interesting questions from some of the members. What we'll do is we'll read them out, and we will see how we go, and see if we can get you squirming a little bit, if that's all right.
Be a friendly chat. That's what you said. Come and have a friendly chat with our members.
So we've sent you some questions, but actually they're not the real questions. We've got real questions here. No, only joking. Only joking. Right. So we'll start up with a question from Daniel Hesselwood. He's asking, do you think a car show with a bunch of historic racers could be a hit? It could be a series of charismatic drivers or ex-racers, such as yourself, Derek Bell, maybe Jackie Stewart, presenting a show. And if you thought that was a good idea, what do you think you would talk about?
It's a lovely idea, but it'll never get commissioned. I mean, sadly, television now, it's these young commissioners that are, they want everything. They have to make it razz and jazz and funky and new, and have to call everyone mate. I was listening to Radio 5 Live just the other day, and it's all, oh, mate, how you doing? Yeah, it's the football. We would just be reminiscing about the dear old times, and people just don't think that makes good television anymore. Much of, a large proportion of the people actually pay their television licenses will probably love it, but no, it would be too niche in this modern day and age, sadly. And these sort of reminiscing videos have to be kept on the YouTube channel or something rather than mainstream telly.
Yeah, it's strange, really, because obviously they've got the sort of new Top Gear or whatever, and
yeah, that proves my point. Look at the state that's in. Freddie and his northern mate talking rubbish.
Yeah, you'd think that would cover the younger niche, and actually there's plenty of us that would want something else. But I think you're probably right.
It's a shame. It's a lovely idea, but it's a shame.
It wouldn't work, perhaps.
Sorry about that, Daniel. If that's Daniel's dream, I'm sorry, Daniel.
I'm seeing him this weekend, so I'll make sure I console him. Dean Grimes is up next, another McLaren driver, actually, like Daniel. His question is, what is the most enjoyable motorsport you have ever participated in?
Oh, well, I think I've participated in everything from the top to the bottom. But enjoyable one, I really do go back to when I was a Formula Ford driver. And Formula Ford, when I started back in 1971, was the sort of karting of today. And it was the sort of, you could do your own thing, bring your own kart for a weekend. And there were races every weekend. This was the beginning formula for any aspiring Grand Prix driver. Go-karting then was a bit of a niche thing and wasn't really the feeder series. So we had like 3 national championships going on. And I was doing like 40 meetings every year. And I don't know where the rich kids were in those days, because everybody sort of had transit and trailers, and we were our own mechanics, and we drove up and down the length and breadth of Britain and camped at the tracks the night before and then banged wheels the next day. And, you know, I just had a mate with me to help out with the pit board. And, you know, if I won the race, we'd have a beer on the way home. And if I lost the race, we'd have a beer to commiserate on the way home. So, and it was great because there was always next weekend, you know. So if you had a bad weekend, you know, you only had to wait 7 days for the next. Whereas the sort of Formula 4 drivers that are sort of the similar thing nowadays, once you leave karting, you know, they have these sort of triple header weekends, but they only have like 8 weekends of motorsport doing 24 rounds. And you've got to have, you know, professional mechanics and all sorts. So it all gets too professional too quickly, I think, with these kids. So to be honest, the most enjoyable time was the old Formula 4 days.
Brilliant, brilliant. Sounds fantastic. I absolutely love karting, and actually we go karting with the club quite a bit.
Oh, do you come to Thruxton, my local track?
Yeah, Thruxton, yeah.
Because that is a superb track for sort of indoor style, and yet it wears your arms out around Thruxton for 20 minutes. The Pucker, really good outdoor track.
Yeah, I absolutely love it there. I was thinking maybe we could have an event where you start at the back.
Oh, come on. I mean, I've got a bit of weight to carry nowadays. I know what karting, I know the trick with karting. You've got some skinny little members. I bet they'll nip off into the distance.
Maybe. Not me, of course, because I'm carrying a bit too much weight. Okay, good. Okay, let's move on to Andy Meyerhoff. He's asking, in relation to your racing career, what were the best and worst decisions you ever made?
Yeah, this was all a bit tricky. I had to give a bit of thinking about this. Yeah. Really, the best decision was to go to Japan, which I did in about 1983. The trouble is once you've tried to be a Grand Prix driver and you've sacrificed everything going up the rankings, and I got from Formula 4 to Formula 3 to Formula 2, I then briefly had my Grand Prix couple of races, but I was only substituting for an injured driver, and the bugger got better. So it was one of the shortest Grand Prix careers, but you know, I made it. So I hung around the Grand Prix world to try and get a permanent drive, but never got it. You know, and I was still living at home with mum and dad, aged about 27, with no money in the bank at all, because you know I didn't get paid as a Grand Prix driver. In fact, mum and dad and my girlfriend, who's now my wife Patsy, went to Belgium for my Grand Prix debut in mum's Datsun 120Y estate to watch their son make his Grand Prix debut, which is a bit different now, I think, from the Lance Strolls that fly in with executive jets to watch their kids race. So I you know, the Grand Prix dream had sort of run out, because you can't hang around on the top of the mountain for long before some other youngster comes up. So, you know, I was looking to earn money, and it was either America or Japan. And I picked up a Group C and Formula 2 drive in Japan and said, right, this is me. I packed my bags and off I went. And that got me earning money as a racing driver for the first time, really. I mean, I had a bit of money in Formula 3. And that got the sort of professional career going in Group C endurance sports car racing, which is, of course, where I ended up for the next 10 years or so. So that was the good decision. The worst decision was hanging around with the Tolman Group. The Tolman Group ran a Formula 2 car for Rad Dougal, a South African kid, for a few years. And I knew them very well, and I was advising them. And they ran a second car for me occasionally, and I did very well. I finished third at Hockenheim in my Formula 2 debut. I think, this is it, I'm going up in the world. And they kept on threatening to run a 2-car team, but then for political reasons, they didn't give me the drive, and I hung up. I thought Tolman will eventually be the ones, you know. And of course, they've ended up going Formula 1 in the end with Derek Warwick and Brian Henton. So I was just sort of stuck, and I didn't branch out or look anywhere else. And funny enough, Robin Hurd, who ran March Engineering, you know, the Formula 2, and in what would have been 78, when I'd done this sort of Formula 2 debut, I met him about 10 years ago. And he said, why didn't you come and knock on my door, Tiff, in 78? You know, I assumed you were racing for Tolman. So he'd assumed the same as I'd assumed. And he said, because if you knocked on my door, I would have put you straight into the factory March 782 team for that year. So perhaps by not opening my eyes or being too tunnel vision, not looking sideways, I missed out on what could have been a career-changing drive. So I'll always... Thanks for asking that. What was asked that flipping question? Hey, who was it?
You thought you were over that, but
No, who asked the question? Andy, was it?
Yeah, Andy Meyerhoff.
Well, I'll be seeing you, Andy.
Andy.
You brought it all back now. I'm upset me now.
I'll have a word with Andy next time I see him.
Yeah.
Dear, oh dear. Okay, so the next one is from Paul Jenner. Paul has asked, Porsche GT3 or Ferrari 458?
Oh.
Which would you pick from a driver's car point of view? And
no, you can't. You can't start categorising the drivers. This is simply a heart rules the head. Therefore, it just has to be the Ferrari. I don't care about the practicality of the Porsche or whatever. I don't care. The heart just says Ferrari, Ferrari, Ferrari. Sorry, Porsche lovers. It's a Ferrari. Ferrari. Got that? Does Paul own a Porsche by any chance?
Paul does drive a Porsche, yes.
Oh, sorry, Paul. Sorry about that. But, you know, it's Italian.
It is personal preference, isn't it? It is personal preference. There's an awful lot of Porsches in the club.
They're very practical Porsche lovers, very sensible people. Very sensible people, you Porsche people. Come on, a Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, a Porsche is a very sensible choice because it ticks so many boxes. I mean, they're a great car to drive as well. Chaos, but yeah, it's personal preference, isn't it? Very much. We better move on before all of our Porsche owners disappear.
Lovely cars, great cars. Go and see Chris Harris. He's a big Porsche boy. He'll keep you happy.
We might have to. We might need an intro there too. Okay, so the next question is from Tony Gibbs, who's on this video call today, recording in the background. So Tony has asked that you they say you should never meet your heroes. Have you met yours, or who would you meet if you could, dead or alive?
Well, yeah, they're all dead. That's the trouble. I mean, my great hero is Jim Clark. I mean, Jim Clark was the one that was sitting in the grandstands at Goodwood and saw him win his first Formula Junior race for Lotus in 1960. I was an 8-year-old. And then forever, Jim Clark was my huge hero. And I just followed him everywhere. And he raced in the Brands Hatch. We'd watch him in the saloon car, and the sports car, and the Formula One car, winning everything. I tried to get his autograph about 3 times. That was as close as I got. But he always politely declined. For me, he was just always slightly too busy, but turning me down as gracious as the gentleman that Jim Clark was, then just the most talented and skilled driver, and followed him. So I could never have another hero, really. I tried to replace him. Emerson Fittipaldi came close, but then, once I started racing, I was then a racing driver, so you don't really have heroes when you're in. But sort of looking back, once I'd sort of progressed in my career and sort of looked sideways a bit more, I think really my heroes in reality were more like Derek Bell or David Hobbs, Richard Atwood. Brian Redman has got the most fabulous book out not that long ago, which I've just got a copy of during the lockdown. And but they were heroes because they raced everything. They did Le Mans and Daytona and the sports cars and saloon cars and Formula One. They were never famous to the public, but they raced in the Targa Florio, for goodness sake, Nürburgring 1,000 kilometers. And sometimes I actually feel quite sorry for the modern day Grand Prix driver, whether it's Lando or Lewis, because they're just stuck into that Formula One, same tracks, same people, huge press pressure. They can't get out of the bar and have a drink the night before the race like Hobbs and Redman used to do. So they're stuck in it's a fantastic groove to be in, Grand Prix driver flying around the world, but you're just stuck in that one very sort of clinical world. So my heroes were probably only just 1 or 2 generations above me that had this amazing variety of life. Barcelona and Montjuic Park in a Formula 2 car that Derek Bell won. So I'm pretty quite jealous of them. But so modern heroes can't really be racing drivers because obviously they're my contemporaries. So a modern day hero might be someone like Ricky Lambert, Southampton's greatest striker. Now there's a man I'd like to meet. Southampton's goal machine. Yeah, I'm afraid I'm a Southampton supporter. That will come out, Greg, so we might as well get it out now in case there's any.
Sorry, you're breaking up. You're breaking up. We're going to have to cut you off.
No.
Joking.
Pompey fan. That's a Pompey fan talk. I can tell now already. It's coming through. Yeah, big Southampton. Funny enough, when we lived near Petersfield, we would have been Pompey fans because that was where, in fact, two of my sons were born right by Portsmouth. But we'd moved to Salisbury near Southampton when, for the first time, one of my sons said, can we go and watch football, Dad? Oh, what am I going to watch football for, But funny enough, I was doing charity golf quite a bit there for Sparks. So I'd got to meet some of the football people and managed to blag some tickets to go to Southampton because that was the nearest town to where we now live. And funny enough, for the first day I walked down to the ground with two little boys in hand with red and white scarves on, I thought, this is what Dad should do, apart from take them to motor racing, of course. So, we've become this huge Southampton fans. But if we hadn't have moved house, we would have been Pompey fans. So it was that close.
Yeah.
It's ended up being Southampton. And I do find as a family, the great thing about it when the kids went off to university, they come home, every 2 weeks to go to the football. So whereas I think a lot of parents, their kids just disappear for 3 or 4 months when they go to university, you never see them or hear from them at all. It's been a lot of fun. So, but Ricky Lambert, bit of a hero, really.
Good answer. Good answer. Right, who's next? Right, next up is Katie Littler. Katie Littler heads up our Performance Club section. She's saying, Tiff, how does your driving style on the road compare to your driving style on the track?
Well, obviously on the road, I'm completely legal all the time. But funny enough, I'm very chilled out on the road. I cruise along, but then I do get very impatient and not angry, but annoyed with people that muck you about and sitting in the middle lane or not, tractor drivers. Now, tractor drivers don't let queues past anymore like they did 10, 20, 30 years ago. They just want to have 10 cars. And so, people don't get out of my way. I get a bit frustrated. I'm pretty good on the roads, basically. I'm chilled. I don't need to go fast. I'm always a bit over the, sort of speed you're supposed to be doing. But, no, I'm cool.
Presumably, you must come up to traffic lights and people come up beside you and they go,
yeah.
and then you can see them getting ready in first gear.
Well, I do the same. I look at them and pretend I'm going to have a race, then just let them shoot off. Then they usually back off and let me overtake, and we have a wave and have a laugh about it. So, yeah, I never take on a challenge. So, but it's just I think the whole trouble is that's what road driving we need more of is give and take. Please just give and take. If you don't want to go fast, then just back off a little bit more, indicate, let me overtake. Don't sort of sit there being a pain. God, I've gone off that's a soapbox, that one. I've gone way over the top on that answer.
Right, next question is from Yunus Manaji. Out of all the cars, this is a tricky one, really, I think. Out of all the cars that you've driven, which left you the most lasting impression?
That's not tricky at all. The McLaren F1. It's just the greatest supercar ever made and will always be so, because nobody's ever going to make a manual, no power assistance supercar ever again, nor with a V12 normally aspirated BMW engine singing its heart out behind you. You might get a central driving position again, I guess. But otherwise, that McLaren F1 was just, because it's accomplished. Gordon Murray made the packaging, the toolbox, the luggage space. He designed it to be a usable, long distance cruiser. Nobody does, because they're now worth about £12 million. Got any members with McLaren F1s?
No, we don't. Sadly, we've got some lovely cars, but not an F1 yet.
No, I just think that's superb. I mean, the modern hypercars are just smothered in electronics and computers and paddle shifts, and you don't really drive it. You're an operator of a modern day hypercar. But that McLaren F1 was just superb.
Yeah, and if you think about it, that was their first car.
Yeah.
How well did they get that right first time?
They've now made about 500 different models out of one car since, haven't they?
The R, GT, S.
Yeah, 720, the Ls, the GTs. There's an awful lot of McLaren models. I think we're all waiting for them to come out with a completely new car, which could be interesting. But I guess they won't be for a while now, with financial troubles seem to have hit them quite badly, don't they? So hopefully they'll pick up and we'll get another new McLaren. I actually raced a McLaren M1 Can-Am car the other weekend, so I've had experience of the very beginnings of McLaren sports cars, which is a wonderful company with great heritage, and I think that's always important.
Really good, really good. I remember quite a few years back, I was lucky enough that my father was working, doing some air conditioning installation in the Woking headquarters when it used to be in Shearwater.
Yeah.
So I got a one-on-one full tour of the factory. So yeah, I feel very privileged. And Ron Dennis's old Mercedes 500 SEC was parked right outside the entrance. Everyone else parked in the car. He parked right outside the doors. So that was a great experience. That goes back a few years now. So next question is from Julian Sunley, who is, sorry, let me just read this. I'll get it in context. So Julian is looking to go to the Nürburgring. And I think really his question is, do you recommend going in your own car? Because that's living the dream, isn't it? You go in your own car, or do you hire one of their sort of, I think they call them Nürburgring taxis, where you hire a cheap Renault Clio or something and go around in that? Because everyone is scared to death, I think, about either being hit or coming off. I mean, everybody's seen the YouTube videos, haven't they?
I think, well, yes, but that might cost you more because you can still get hit off in a taxi. He might mean the taxis where you're just a passenger, like, you know, Sabine Schmitz does it and many others do it. So I think he might be thinking either you drive your own car or you go as a passenger in the taxi.
Maybe. Okay.
I don't think he might not be talking about renting a taxi. And that's, you know, everyone that's done the taxi just says it's a mind-blowing experience. Because if you haven't been around before, you can't believe the speed. All racing drivers earning a bit of money on the side. So I think in a way, if you're going to do 2 trips, I'd do the taxi. I don't think it is expensive, but I think the passenger ride is awesome. And then drive your own car. But I'd use your own car rather than renting a car. That's, you know, I think that gets a bit complex. So I think if you're familiar with your own car, it's a greater story as well to say, well, I drove down to the Nürburgring in my whatever, and then I did some laps in it. But if you want to treat yourself to a taxi ride, I've heard great things about it. And of course, I do my little taxi rides at Thruxton. If you want to come for 3 laps with a lunatic and a BMW M4, then I do the Thruxton taxi rides, which has never disappointed yet.
Yeah, we should definitely do that. In fact, we will. We will definitely do that. Okay, so next question is from Steve Collis. Who is your favourite co-presenter, and who have you had the most fun with?
Oof, this is dangerous territory. They might be listening. And I've had a lot of presenters over about 30 years of doing it. Oh, the favourite is obviously Vicky Butler-Henderson. I mean, nobody could be better than Vicky. But having fun with, I mean, back to Jeremy Clarkson and Quentin Wilson in the mid-90s when Top Gear first took off. And we had an awful lot of fun because we did those live shows. I remember everyone went to the London Motor Show and the Birmingham Motor Show in the late 90s. We were on stage mucking about, 2 weeks drinking, partying, and we had an awful lot of laughs. There's a famous Ford Puma when I'm driving them around one of the autodromes somewhere. So Quentin and Clarkson, Jeremy together in the sort of 90s, and most fun probably recently is more with Jason Plato. We have a great bit of banter together, so having a laugh, because we don't actually spend that many days, you know, together filming together. We're normally doing individual items. So Jason Plato, and currently of course I'm doing Love Cars on YouTube, which is a TV show coming soon. I can't say which channel, but we have filmed a complete Love Cars, and I'm co-presenting there with Paul, who's the creator of Love Cars. And we've got great chemistry and we have a lot of fun. So even right up to date, there's new friends to share presenting with. Was there a second question in that? Oh yes, no, yeah, I had the most fun with. That was it. Yeah, Vicky. Yeah, Vicky's obviously my. Well, nobody could ever want anyone rather than Vicky as their favourite.
Well, it leads us nicely to the next question, which is actually by me, and that is, who is the most annoying co-presenter that you've ever worked with? And don't say me. Don't say me.
I had a quick glance at that one before, and I thought, you swine. Now that puts me on the stop spot. But I thought about it for a bit, and it's probably Quentin, because Quentin is the most knowledgeable man for the English language. I mean, Jeremy's the same. They're both wordsmiths. You know, they can write their columns. You know, write 1,000 words about a matchbox, and Jeremy can do it in about 2 minutes. Whereas every column I've ever written, I take about a day to do 1,000 words, or writing a sentence, then having a cup of coffee, then reading the sentence and rewriting it. But they're both wonderful users of the British vocabulary. But Quentin just pours it out. So whenever he's presenting, he doesn't really think much about the script. He just says what he thinks sounds right. And I always remember classically, we were doing one, I don't know, it was one of those road crash investigations that Fifke did quite a few of, especially when we just opened the show in the early 2000s. And there was some fact about 1,000 people die every year on motorways doing something. So the first take we did, you know, all these crashes are terrible. Quentin was, yes, I know, 1,000 people die every year, you know. And then something stumbled, so we had another take. So I introduced it again, all these crashes, and Quentin said, yes, I know, 1 million people die every year. So we finished the tape. I said, Quentin, the script is 1,000. Yes, I know it, but 1 million sounds so much better. So he just goes his own way, Quentin, and doesn't really care. If he slightly distorts the facts, which I guess is what, you know, Jeremy Clarkson's great trick, isn't it? Just because he's always exaggerating, he can get away with that as his style and not being truthful. So Quentin would drive me out because he just knew all his knowledge, just poured out of his head, and I was trying to learn scripts, but he would just that was pretty annoying.
That is annoying. That is annoying. But what about Jeremy? I mean, hopefully he's not watching this, but he's got a bit of a reputation off screen. Presumably,
well, it's interesting. Yeah, it grows. I mean, I've seen it all happen. So this sort of, you know, being a diva and stuff, it gets forced upon you because when as I said, we had huge fun in the mid-90s when we first had 6 million viewers with Quentin, Jeremy and me. And we'd be down the bars in Birmingham when we met for a voiceover, you know, drinking a few, look at those girls over there, look at that bloke over there having a laugh. And the fans would come up and say, love the show, mate, you know, and we'd all say, yeah, all right, mate, thanks. And they'd walk away. And gradually Jeremy became the big figurehead with his humour and his character. The same sort of people come up in these bars and come up and say, yeah, I love the show, boys. Yeah, we'd say yes. And then we start talking again and they're still there. You say, you're right, mate? Yeah, okay. And they don't go away. Right. And that is how fame begins to mould. So you grad your whole life. I mean, I remember James May was the nicest of all the three, you know, the three amigos. He loves sitting in his pub and having a pint and reading the newspaper. But you can't now. He says people just come and sit down beside him and start talking. However much you say, yes, all right, mate, they don't go away. So eventually, of course, when you're having a bit of a bad day, you say, oh, but with you know. And they go straight to the Daily Mirror. You know, Jeremy Clarkson told me to all I wanted was his autograph. I just wanted to say I loved him. So then you get, society then pushes you into these bubbles. And, you know, you do become more controversial. And I just saw it happening. And so, you know, Jeremy gets paranoid about the paparazzi, you know, because he got caught with a girlfriend and had the divorce. So then every time he walks out of his house, you know, and I've been with him, and there are cameras, you know, and you sit and have breakfast with him anywhere in a cafe in London, and you can see them up the street. You walk out the cafe, and there they are. So, you know, it's a way it turns you. So it's hard to criticise them, I think, as they get older and more famous. Because there is this, they can't go anywhere normal anymore. It's a price of superstardom. You know, you can't really go anywhere on your own without getting hassled. So it's a funny thing, fame and fortune. It's a shame you can't have both without the other, I was going to say.
I suppose so, yeah, that's the optimal.
Yeah.
Okay, next question is from Dean Stokes. Dean's one of our founding members, so a personal friend of mine. He asks, where was your most memorable drive and in what car?
Oh, yeah, I hate questions like this. Is he a friend of yours? Is that what you said?
That's what you said.
I was so many drives, you know, but like I said, I'm not sort of, you know, driving on the roads is just gets from A to B. I don't sort of, you know, all this when did you last get up at 4 o'clock in the morning just to drive your car? Well, I'd never get up at 4 o'clock in the morning just to drive a car. Because I'm lucky, you know, I've driven off tracks all the time, so much track driving, you know, I've driven every supercar, and, you know, so I've had that fortune. But I mean, for a fantastic driving experience, I have been the lead car in a couple of Formula One tours to the Monaco Grand Prix. So I was in a Porsche Turbo leading a load of howling Lamborghinis and Ferraris. And down to the Route Napoleon, that's a pretty amazing road when you've got a little group of you and you thunder through the valleys. So that was very memorable. But otherwise, no, just sort of cruising. I couldn't think of anything else. I'd love to cruise down Route 66 for 2 weeks, but I haven't got time. I think coming home from passing my driving test in Mum's Morris 1000 in 1960 something was pretty special. So that was a memorable drive of a different type. So yeah, it's hard.
With the exception of the Monaco Grand Prix trip, you haven't done any other sort of mille sort of those sort of.
No, I've hosted the mille. I'm with a little company called Motor Passion. We host guests at Monaco British Grand Prix. We go to the Daytona 500 in February, which is a fantastic trip. We're just sort of, you know, 20 well-to-do enthusiasts. So I do that sort of thing. But no, I haven't hosted many other events of driving down. But I've done that Monaco one a couple of times.
Yeah, I quite fancy that myself.
Yeah, it's a great trip. I mean, it's all, you know, Michelin-starred restaurants and hotels, and only doing about sort of, you know, 200 miles a day, you know, 100 miles, have lunch. Take about 5 days to get to Monaco. Yeah, but drive some amazing roads. But it's the opposite of the Gumball Rally. I mean, I can't stand, I'm sorry, if anyone out there has ever done the Gumball Rally, I'm not sure they should be in your club. But that's just stupid driving and, you know, doing sort of
not for drinking, I think, isn't it?
500 miles a day, you know, arriving at midnight, drinking till 3 a.m. and getting up at 5 a.m. And supercars should cruise delicately. And, you know, with me in the lead car, we knew little stretches where we'd open it up and I'd lead the pack, as it were, to go a bit quicker. And then you just cruise gently. And so, yes, it's that balance. You don't want to go mad all day long being a lunatic.
What about the Le Mans Classic? Have you driven to that?
No, I have never been involved in the Le Mans Classic. I'd raced in the Monaco Classic. So I suppose there was some great, when going to Le Mans. The thing about modern driving, going back to that, you know, what's your favourite drive? Of course, nowadays you jump on the auto route. I don't have time to drive all the old routes, which is what you should do. You know, you should drop off at places, but you'd take, you know, twice the time that just jumping on the dreaded motorways does.
Yeah.
So that's probably a shame of the modern world, is that we don't spend more time on the lovely old routes, cruising through lovely villages and enjoying it. That's what we should do. But I just haven't had the time to do that.
It's the same for all of us, isn't it? We just want to do everything so quickly. There's no sort of time.
Yeah.
Relishing anything anymore, which is a shame, really. Okay, so next question is from the lovely Jenny Baker Carr. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Jenny.
You'll be squealing now. Hi, Tiff, she says, if you hadn't gone into racing, what career would you have done?
Oh, blimey. Well, I was a civil engineer, full-time. BSc Honours, George Wimpy & Co Limited. So I actually did a 5-year sandwich degree course, working every summer out with George Wimpy, getting experience. And it was during this period that I won the Formula Ford racing car. So for 5 years or more, I was a civil engineer 5 days a week and a mechanic 5 nights a week in my little garage, a racing driver, a van driver at the weekend. I finished my degree in 74 and I was a full-time civil engineer for 2 years while still racing as an amateur. And it was only in 77 when Unipart offered me a Formula 3 drive that I became a retired civil engineer. So I didn't have a full-time career, but I really wanted, if I couldn't be a racing driver, to be lead guitar in a rock and roll band, to be honest. I mean, when we were in Japan, we had a bunch of racing drivers out in Japan, in Tokyo. We used to go around having a chat and having a laugh. And of course, you know, we'd be a group of blokes having a bit of fun and we'd chat up the girls. And, you know, we all decided, if we said we were racing drivers, nobody would believe us. So we did go through a whole period of, you know, inventing we were airline pilots or gynecologists or something like that. So I've been quite a few different jobs in my life when we've made them up. But no, I was a civil engineer.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Still got me wimpy hat. That's wimpy with an EY as well.
Yeah, not the one that serves burgers, no. Okay, next question is from Neil Hurren. Hi, Neil. Which was the best car show, Top Gear or Fifth Gear?
Well, it has to be Top Gear because that was sort of the original that's lasted so long. And the great thing about the Top Gear in the 90s that we grew up to, you did your own story. You had no outside influence from any commissioning editor or producers or directors. You were given a story to do. You wrote your own script. You went and filmed it for a day, and then about a week later, they'd edited it and left the gaps, where you could add voiceover for the bits you'd forgotten or the bits you got wrong when you did pieces to camera. And literally, in those days, I'd go to Birmingham on the Wednesday, and I'd do the voiceover, filling in the gaps of my story, and that was on telly the next day. And nobody changed it. I mean, when I did the voiceover in the voiceover booth, the director and producer were there and they add a few words, but it was so instant and so much my story and nobody told me what to do or say. Whereas now the modern day of making television, things like Fifth Gear, you have to produce the whole 6 shows 3 or 4 months before they're transmitted. And every time you do a show, the commissioning people will want to change this or redo that or change your words. And there's so much interference in modern day television, the way they run the shows, that it's frustrating. So the freedom of the 90s with Top Gear is what I always remember as the nicest times of working on TV. But fortunately with Love Cars, which is our new TV show coming soon, I've mentioned, but I can't say where or who or with what, that's just Paul and me. So we've always gone back to the enjoyment of my early Top Gear days. So when you watch those shows, you'll know I'm enjoying myself perhaps more than the forced area of Fifth Gear. I remember like Tom Ford that was on Fifth Gear for quite a while. And he was told to do these 3-car tests instead of doing it as a journalist, which he is a very good journalist, looking at the accommodation, the performance, the value of a car. And he was told to find out which car could drive to a supermarket with a ladder and an inflatable elephant on its head better, or he was just told in the scripts of these stupid tests, which would often give the wrong result. So the winner of these 3 stupid tests was not, in Tom Ford's journalistic opinion, the best car. And he literally left the show because, he was just forced to do stupid tests, which goes back to the modern day television that people seem to think the public want. That's a bit serious, wasn't it?
I never really understood those silly tests. I would always skip through those.
Well, I know. No, I don't know. Nobody watched them. I mean, the other funny thing is, I always look at piston heads. There's always the forums on piston heads, and they would criticise my show, and I would be agreeing with what they said about my show. They didn't like us doing that. And whenever you suggest that to producers, well, look, these fans, they actually don't like that. That's a minority. That's the anoraks, and they dismiss the true enthusiast's opinion and try to look. You ever hear a producer saying, "Oh, I'm going to widen the audience"? That's the end of the world. That's what happened with Top Gear. When Top Gear ended, in 2000, we had a new controller of BBC Two, Jane Root, came in, and she wanted to broaden Top Gear. So she told us, "Do we have to have all those numbers? Can we get those numbers out of it? And Tiff, you gel your hair and untuck your shirt." And literally, the viewing figures went down because the traditional viewers then turned off. And her brilliant ideas didn't, bring in a new audience. So it's tricky, but yeah, good old Top Gear. That was good fun.
It is tricky, and Top Gear was such a success that it is quite difficult to criticise it, isn't it? But
yeah, it did peter out. To be fair, once Clarkson left in the late 1990s and Quentin left us, the viewing figures dropped off because it didn't have, the two best presenters in the team anymore. It is very much about getting those people. But the funny thing is with the new Top Gear, or not the new Top Gear, or the new Top Gear, the first Top Gear when Jeremy came back, it didn't get that. We were taken off air by Jane Root because 2 million wasn't enough viewers, even though it's the same as Gardener's World or any other BBC Two magazine show. But when Jeremy came back with their new format, they got up to about 3 million because Jeremy was back. Not huge, but 3.5, it was going okay. And then, of course, Hammond bumped his little head, and every mum in Britain went, "Oh, Richard Hammond's bumped his little head." And when the show came back, the first show back after Richard's accident, had 8 million viewers. So it was literally that accident that caused the whole of Britain to start loving Top Gear, and was the kick-off moment for their huge success. I mean, and then they started entertaining the family that they caught. So they adapted the show to entertain the family, really, from that moment onwards. Funny world.
Yeah. So just run me by that bit again. They adapted the show to...
Well, to shoot, because the new audience, the 8 million, they had all the statistics. They know who's watching, what sort of people. Because they found it was no longer a male-dominated, viewing figure. Because they now saw that the family were watching, because the mums wanted to watch Jeremy to make sure, watch Richard, to make sure he didn't bang his head again. Yeah. And so it became more of a family audience. They can tell that. They get all the feedback.
Yeah.
So then they adapted it to be a more light-hearted show and less, a petrol-head show. Which is fair enough, It became a light entertainment show. Now it's gone even lighter and lighter, and it's going to be on BBC One and be even lighter.
Yeah.
So, as I said, television's going away. Like we began this, this chat show talking about, a historic show with Jackie Stewart and Derek Bell. Just they don't think anybody will watch that anymore. Well, very few. It's all light entertainment now. Too light.
I've noticed that Neil asked another question, and I've got my pen ready. He just wants me to make a note of Vicky Butler Henderson's mobile number.
I've got it, and he can't have it.
Oh,
end of.
You send messages.
Actually, was there another question from Keith B? Did we do that question I mentioned? Because I saw that about a Ferrari 360. Because you've got one of those, haven't you?
Oh, right. Yes, you're right. I managed to miss that one. We'll come back to that one then. So Keith Bean, you're absolutely right. You once said, Tiff, that you believe that the Ferrari 360 was the best handling car you've ever driven. Do you still stand by this with today's modern...
You see, Greg, I've caught you out there, you see, because I've also got a copy of the questions in front of me. Because you own a 360, right?
I do.
Yeah, right. And you just asked me the question. I said that Ferrari 360 was the best handling car. That's what you just said to me, right? The actual question, Greg, is the Ferrari one of the best handling cars? You see, you did that. You just took out the one of the, didn't you?
I did.
You did, because you're so blinded by your 360 bias. You actually took out those words from the question, was one of the best handling.
That was an accident, I promise.
So, yes, I mean, yes, the 360 is still one of the best handling cars. And a lot of the modern cars, the 458 is sublime. For me, that's probably the best ever Ferrari, because now that I'm not a fan of forced induction. So as soon as we got to turbochargers, I just slightly go off them. I'm just such a passionate fan of normally aspirated, wailing V8s and whatever. But now, of course, they get better and better. They'll go around racetracks faster and faster because they've got more power and more downforce and more grip. But forever now, there's more, as I've mentioned this before, we're talking about the McLaren F1, there's so much more electronics and computers and traction controls and the old little Manatino on your Ferrari with about 5 or 6 different settings. And, you're not driving the car anymore. And so the 360 will remain one of the best handling cars for a long time to come, I think.
Yeah, I must admit, I absolutely love the car, but actually the car is up for sale.
What?
Would you like to buy it?
Well, no, because I haven't got the flash at the moment, But why are you selling it, Greg? You'll have to retire. What are you replacing it with? This is what I should be asking you the question now. What are you going to replace your 360 with? Your members need to know.
Well, I'm trying to keep it a bit of a secret, really, but. The honest answer is I don't definitely know yet. I'm thinking maybe a Aventador.
Ooh, go big flashy Lambo. That's 4-wheel drive. Come on, good on You don't
subscribe to 4-wheel drive.
No, handling won't handle as well. You see, this is the point. This is where your 360 is your classic rear-wheel drive, beautifully handling, balanced sports car. But Lamborghinis around racetracks, especially the Aventador, they're a bit heavy, understeery, four-wheel drive. They're not nimble anymore. Great and straight, look fantastic. I mean, they're a fabulous looking car. You know, great on roads, but
drama. So
what?
I was just saying that obviously I've got a Ferrari at the moment. There's a fair amount of drama with that, but with an Aventador, the drama level goes up quite a lot, doesn't it?
Oh, it looks, yeah, inside. Yeah.
So you know the sound and the noise and the doors and anyway, that's on the list. But also maybe a Ferrari 458.
Well, now you're talking. There you go. Let's forget this Lamborghini business. Let's get on to a 458. They're the same sort of money. I've no idea what it costs. This is where I have to phone up Quentin Wilson. I know Quentin will say, yes, I know an F plate of Lambo is better than the G plate. I have no idea. Would that be the same sort of money in Aventador and a 458?
Yeah, well, yeah, they are similar money. But we drove, as the club, we drove a McLaren GT recently. Have you driven one of those?
No.
That is a fabulous car to drive, I have to say. I recommend you drive.
What is that? What power's that?
612, I think.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I was at a drag race thing we did with Love Cars, and they had one there. Yeah, the little lightweight racy one. Well, in fact, I did drive it. I took his son out and I did some power sliding burnout. So yes, I did drive it very briefly. Oh, but yeah, quite a car.
Yeah. So McLaren's on the radar as well. So anyway, we'll see. I've got to sell the Ferrari first, so we'll see how well that goes.
They're all fabulous. Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Porsches. They're just wonderful cars.
So we've got a couple of questions left. Stuart Jones, if you could only drive one car, what would it be?
Oh, yeah.
Difficult one because it's got to be an all-rounder, hasn't it?
Yeah, you see, well, I'd buy what I've been driving the last 10, 15 years. I was an ambassador with BMW, and I'm now an ambassador with Hendy Performance in the South Coast. I've gone from a 5 Series estate to a Jaguar XE estate, or whatever word they use for it. And to be honest, I'd buy a BMW, a high-powered 5, 4, 5, whatever engines they've got now, estate. And if I could find a manual one, but I don't think they made manual 5 Series for a long time now. I remember I had a 550i manual about 10 or 15 years ago, which was absolutely
one of those?
The what?
Did they even make a manual 550?
Yeah, I had about 3 of them from BMW. You run them for about 7,000 miles, and they go into the BMW sales schemes. So I think every time you see a 550i up, it's probably one I ran in for them, because nobody bought them new, I don't think. But it was like a poor man's M5, but I actually enjoyed it more because it had this wonderful manual gearbox. And although I was 200 horsepower short of an M5, it was a fabulous car just to enjoy driving. I just love using manuals. My son's got a 17-year-old Corsa, and I love getting in it occasionally, nipping up to the shops, changing gear and revving the little 16-valve 1.2 litre to its limit. Just because it's light and frisky and I'm doing all the driving. That's what I think really gets me going.
I take it you're not into paddle shift then?
No. It takes all the fun and involvement. It's a lazy thing. And I love the paddle shift when I'm doing my driving experiences, my taxi runs at Thruxton, because I'm just flapping away. But, when I look at racing drivers now, I mean, the car is now 90%, the lap time is 95% car and 5% driver, whereas with Jim Clark, it was 95% Jim Clark and 5% the car. And you see them turning into the corners, just changing down, and they open up the lock and they change up and change up and change. We had to choose before a corner which gear. You'd have to short shift sometimes, and because you couldn't turn the wheel and change gear at the same time because the steering was so heavy and the old no power steering. So it's that driver involvement is always what I go back to. So I'm always looking for a car which gives me that driver involvement.
So when you're going around the corner, though, if you can get around the corner quicker because it's on paddle shift,
yes, you can, because you can change. They're downshifting into the corner, so that helps the deceleration progress to the apex, and then they're upshifting on the way out. So yeah, it makes quicker lap times. I think that the day the world ended for me was when automatics started producing quicker 0 to 62s and manuals. That was the day the world collapsed on me, because you couldn't argue against people when they wanted the quickest car from 0 to 62. And with the manuals and with the autos now, with their quick shifts, they can do that.
I've been having this ongoing debate with one of my pals, Ricky. He always buys a manual. I always buy one with the paddle shift. And, you know, we're always taking the mickey out of each other, that which one is the one that people should go for. And people are absolutely passionate about one or the other, aren't they?
You're not about to tell me your 360 is an automatic, are you?
You're breaking up again, Tiff. I'm afraid we're going to have to cut you off.
Oh, no. It's not that little silly little thing in the middle for getting reverse gear, is it?
That's the one. That's the one. You mean the fastest 360? Yeah, that one.
I mean, it hasn't got that evocative, emotive gate for those wonderful lever slotting through the Ferrari gate to give that satisfaction. I mean, back to the next question. Next question.
It's beautiful. It's going into gear, and the F1 version is overtaking you as you're changing gear.
I don't care about being overtaken at all. I don't care about getting to 62 faster than anybody else in my Porsche Taycan battery pack. I don't care. I just want to enjoy the driving the car.
Fair enough.
Move on, Greg. I don't know about blooming well. You might have to retire from your job soon if you're going to start doing this sort of thing.
Right, James Quantrill. What's the best excuse you've used to get off or tried to get off a speeding ticket?
I saw this and I thought, it's just so long now. It's amazing. Luckily for us now, there are so few police officers out on the road because they can't afford them. So, I hadn't been pulled over for so long. And really, when I got stopped, I just went for them sort of just polite, and didn't try to get too pushy. And I think they're all human. And I have got off a few times when officers have said, oh, I thought it was you, Tiff. Now, just be a bit more sensible, will you, and run along. And the beauty to me about the police officers of the olden days, that they had to follow you for a third of a mile, and it was a fair cop if they followed you for a third of a mile acting like a twat. You deserved to get a ticket. Now these cameras that have no sense or rhyme or reason, whether it's 3 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just annoy people. But the good old-fashioned police, they've always had a sense. I always when the motorbike cops were pretty lethal in the 70s. You couldn't really smile at them at all. You just got your ticket instantly. But I remember distinctly my funniest one was when at Mum's Morris 1000 learning to drive, I used to borrow. And of course, Morris 1000 in the wet on a roundabout, I mean, you're drifting at 20 miles an hour, so you're not exceeding the speed limit. And I did get pulled over by a motorbike cop, and his first words were, "Do you normally drive sideways round a roundabout, sir?" To which I just said yes, and he laughed and let me go. But I think they're all right. Most of the traffic cops are all right. You occasionally get one that's just by the book, but a bit of common conversation, and they'll let you get on your way, and you respect them for it. But if you take the piss, you deserve to get nicked.
You haven't had the classic, "Who the hell do you think you are, Tiff Needell?"
No. I wish I had, but sadly I can't. Quentin would have made that story up. See, Quentin wouldn't have worried about truth. He would just come up with some wonderful story, which probably wasn't true at all, but he would tell it in such wonderful ways. I know, I once was stopped by a police officer.
I suppose what would be worse is if someone said, "Who do you think you are, Quentin Wilson?"
Yeah. No, that's not happened.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions, I think, here. Very specific, this one. I'm not sure whether you'll be aware of the Ultimate RS. Mike Van Barrick says, what is your opinion on it?
Aware of it. Ultimately, they're just racing cars on the road, rather than the other way around. So they're quite a raw machine, the Ultimate. That new RS, it does look pretty spectacular. I mean, you can see the underlying bodywork is the same as the sports car, the same sort of fashion. But it is such a racing car, and it's a very sort of niche market. If he's going to buy one or he's got one, you're not going to go cruising too far in it, I wouldn't have thought, because it's going to be quite a brutal ride. And the front, I think it's got all these sort of racing, unless it's got a lifting jack at the front, you're going to do your front splitter very quickly. So yeah, an awesome bit of kit, but a bit too raw for me.
Yeah, yeah, probably a great track car, I would have thought.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's made for being a track car. Yeah, fantastic as a track day car. But by the time you got to the Nürburgring, your back might be a bit stiff. You might have done your splitter in. I was amazed that there was a McLaren now. Was it the McLaren I was driving with automatic lifts the front up and you drop below a certain speed?
Oh,
Which
right.
is quite
I didn't
interesting.
know that about that one.
No, it's the F40. That's right. I was in an F40 doing a drag race. Something as old as the F40 had an auto lift when you drop below 5 miles an hour. I didn't know that at all. Completely news to me. And yet, all these modern hypercars, you have to press a button, don't you? Or flick a switch.
Yeah, that is amazing. That is amazing. Okay, so last question from the members then. The last one is from Liam Bowers. And he asks, do you still love tearing around racetracks, burning up sets of tyres? Silly question, really, isn't it?
Yes. I do. I still love it. And the trouble is, a bit like you were saying, 0 to 60, what's quickest or something, it doesn't have to be the fastest or anything. Basically, whatever I'm given has a limit. And the sort of teasing it to the limit on a track, whether it's a 1.2 hot hatch or a hypercar or a big saloon car or a lorry or anything, just tickles my fancy. You've got to get it to the limit and then get it beyond the limit and then get it back from beyond the limit, and just playing on the edge of life is sort of, you're either a thrill taker or you're a cotton wool cuddler. I mean, it's sort of, so I just love that, ruining tires, basically. I hate to think how many tires I've ruined. But the Thruxton drives I'm doing, I do about 20 laps does the rear tires in, so it's a bit of an expensive thing, but when it's wet at Thruxton, I'm drifting at 90 miles an hour around the fast corners at the back, completely lit up sideways and just grinning from ear to ear. So yeah, I'm afraid I will never. Peter Pan will want to power slide forever.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I love it. Well, that's the end of the members' questions. One question that we didn't put on your list, but we know that you know about, because you mentioned it in our trailer, and that is, why are you not on fifth gear anymore?
Oh, they dumped me. I told you about those young commissioners with silly ideas. Some kid with power at the Discovery Channel, Discovery TV, decided the show would be better without. His protege was that bloke with all the sideburns that does something else, does some sort of mechanic reproducing show. I think that's his favourite. And yeah, I thought they were going to change the format of the show. It kept the same format, but it's actually done quite well because the publicity I had backwards, everything on the Fifth Gear website and every viewer just said, "Where's Tiff? And this is outrage. We're not watching it anymore." So it's given me a great boost of the ego. And is greatly helping, get some interest in love cars. And there has been talk about they might be asking me back should another Fifth Gear series be commissioned, but there hasn't been one commissioned yet. But I don't know. It was so sad for me. I mean, I understand that someone's got a job and his job is to make every show that's in his control a better show to get a bigger audience, and that's what they try to do. But if someone doesn't like you, you can't change their mind. So it was obviously just someone didn't like me, and that's life. And as I began the show, I was the creator of Fifth Gear. When we left Top Gear, I was the person that went to Chrysalis, that's now North One, and said, "Look, this Top Gear is a fantastic show as it is. Let's offer it to other channels." And I was the one that brought the whole team. So Fifth Gear was my baby, and to have it drop from me was a bit of a sad moment, really. That's life.
You think if they wanted you back, you would entertain it?
Yes, of course I would, probably. I still love the show. As I said, I created it, and it depends how it goes. I still want to work, and I need the, employment. And there's not many other shows around for cars anymore. So still, when we do 4 Marks, club TV, when we're big, we'll be doing it. We can make our own shows then, once you've got all that sponsorship in and all that sort of stuff, which I know you're going to bring to the club, Craig, because that's that's what you're going to do, isn't it?
Well, me and the rest of the team, obviously. Tony's been working very hard on that.
4 Marks TV, big time.
We'll definitely be doing more of it. So, Tiff, what can I say? Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
can I just say a big thanks to Lester Brunt Wealth Management, who have basically made this happen today. So thanks, guys. Lester Brunt, one of our lead sponsors.
Thank you, Lester Brunt. Cheers.
So I'm hoping that you'll come back and do another episode.
Good, or come to one of your days. Yeah, it'd be brilliant. So yeah, nice to meet up with your members, and maybe we can do one-to-one questions at some Goodwood breakfast meeting. Or do you go down to those ever? I don't know what goes on. I've never been to many.
Yeah. It'd be nice to do it face-to-face though, Tiff, right? Rather than
exactly.
So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have and the rest of the team here have. Thank you very much, and obviously we'll see you very soon at one of the next 4Marks events, but look out for more 4Marks TV coming soon. But in the meantime, thanks very much. Bye everyone.
Cheers everyone. Bye.
Tiff Needell here. You have to be a complete fool not to join 4Marks Car Club.